Hello my friends of Cosmic Agency, this is Gosha and I am making this video. I'm not sure if I'm looking in the right position because this is Robert's mobile actually that I'm using. I wanted to make this introduction to today's video, which is going to be mainly Athena explaining the reason why the moon and the Van Allen bands were placed. One of the reasons. At the end of the video, I also included short conversations from past conversations with Yazhi, Aneeka, and even Swaruu of Erra in the topic of the moon, just to complement the topic of the moon here. But mainly it is Athena explaining that the placement of the moon and Van Allen bands was also to stabilize the Earth after the Tiamat destruction. And it is something that we haven't discussed before. It's a new angle, so to speak, but it is important. And as you see here, nothing ever has just one explanation. Every situation, every event, everything that happens always has multiple reasons behind it. So that's the case also here with the moon. And Athena complements the picture of the moon with this new, in a way, to me, angle of why the moon was placed. Well, thank you very much. Enjoy the video and I will see you in the next. Bye-bye. Originally in Spanish, February 2022. Recently you mentioned that placing of Moon Federation battle-damaged spherical biosphere ship in orbit was done in an attempt to stabilize Earth and bring it to an acceptable equilibrium after the Tiamat explosion. And that electromagnetic etheric fence, Van Allen belts, were placed as part of the efforts to energetically stabilize planet Earth, lowering internal frequency and limiting its ability to connect to Source with it. In your words, this was to be a temporary measure only, while the solar system returned or developed a new homeostasis. How did the lowering of the frequency from the moon stabilize the Earth? Why would the lower frequency stabilize it? Stabilization is mostly due to the presence of mass. As a counterbalance, frequency goes along with density. Changing the effect and amount of mass of Earth in relation to the moon and the rest of the solar system. That is, slightly changing the qualities of the Earth, helping the relationship between it and the moon, affects the energetic relationship between the stars of the solar system, and with it subsequent interaction with the balance of the solar system. The frequencies increase the mass of the Earth slightly by making it denser than it was before, with its subsequent consequences for all who live there. As the relationship between counterbalancing mass ratio equilibrium in the solar system, weight and specific mass are critical factors. Failure to stabilize the Earth means it will enter a more elliptical orbit with a higher inclination, also creating an almost uninhabitable climate within, also affecting other planets and their complex ecosystems. Why didn't Swaruu 9 say this before when she talked about this? Didn't she know? I am Swaruu X, unified with the others. I know more things. But the balance as a desired effect, yes, they had to have known this, since that is very Federation. And it was Federation's plan. I don't know why it hasn't been mentioned before. I assumed it was. I did not know this angle.
it is very interesting and seems important. It could have been said in other words. It just seems obvious to me. You put a big mass close to a planet, you affect the whole balance of its orbit and with it the balance of the other planets. If the destruction of Tiamat unbalanced the entire solar system, it is only logical to think that balancing the Earth would balance the rest as well. Another point is that the nominal density of the Moon, of the artificial biosphere, must also have been affected as a product of its own engines that maintain the Earth and with it itself in a doughy 3D low density. With that, it is congruent to see that the Moon has more mass density than a biosphere ship of equal size, but that it stays within its own toroid of misnamed 5D frequencies compared to the low lunar 3D. I also see that the information given before focused a lot on the consequences of artificial low 3D frequency imposition for the population, and not on the mathematical dynamics between the stars. Yes, there is another question I have. You mentioned that you don't agree that this has been done to keep the reptilians out, because these are the effect of the human mind after frequencies being lowered. But the whole war on Tiamat happened before the lowering of frequencies. Reptiles were already there then. Yes, the problem came from before, but it was inherited then on Earth, and then it was perpetuated on Earth as its own egregor, not reflecting the dynamic between progressive and regressive races outside of Earth, thus creating its own dynamic between soul beings manifesting soulless egregor beings who rely on energetic vampirization by exploiting beings with souls. Yes, it has created its own dynamics. Yes, I understand. But it has started before, hasn't it? Because to explode a planet like Tiamat, the reptile problem had to be very serious. Yes, but then a very own reptilian dynamics within the Earth got created, because the low 3D and its frequencies propitiate the creation, development and emergence of regressive races that exploit the apparent limitations of the human race, especially without memory of past lives, which is a direct consequence of the lack of connection with the original source by disparity of frequencies caused by the 3D itself, artificially imposed by the Moon. In addition to the fact that before there already existed the concepts of manifestation of regressive egregors outside the Earth, egregors manufactured by the soul races, especially the Lyrian ones. But later on Earth, this formed its own flavor, or especially noxious variant of such Lyrian manifestation egregors. I understand, yes. It's like lowering the body's immune system where it's then invaded by all kinds of bacteria, yes? Not that bacteria didn't exist before, but they took advantage of the situation more, and new strains have been created. Yes, exactly. The low frequencies to stabilize the Earth, which are also said to be to enclose reptilians, I disagree, as a consequence, made a planet conducive and perfect for that kind of regressive egregor beings to swarm and flourish. Interesting that you disagree with this part. But so the reptiles could leave Earth with these frequencies imposed? I am not referring to the portals. I am referring to that time back. Not being able to leave through the Van Allen bands still applies, unless you have total electromagnetic toroidal immersion technology, which by default also includes that of the portals, since it is the same thing but in reverse as an inverted sock, without which you cannot leave the Earth, because from the point of view of existential properties of the misnamed 3D, it turns out that the Van Allen bands create a zone of high ionizing radiation that literally destroys all organic tissues in the 3D frequency range upon contact with them. Yes, so that's still the same. They couldn't get out, okay. There are always complex reasons behind everything, not just one. Also, all decisions bring positive and negative consequences. On the one hand, you stabilize a planet in trouble. On the other hand, you cause a nest of regressive vermin. Okay, it's all very clear now. You explained it very well. Thank you. You're welcome. And thank you. I will leave you now and continue as soon as possible. Another day. Speaking of how lowering the frequencies from the Earth's moon has made it heavier, does that mean that the high-frequency person would weigh less overall, and the low-frequency person would weigh more? Or that's nothing to do with anything? Yes, it goes hand in hand, to the degree that someone with very high frequency ceases to be material, like many monks in Tibet. Or our creature, Yazhi. Just that it is not as simple as just pure max index as in weight or amount of matter, but it also relates to energetic frequency. So you could be overweight but of high frequency, and then you would weigh less than another overweight person with low frequency. I know I'm simplifying it, just joking. Objectively, whether or not a person is overweight would have nothing to do with it. The problem here is that it is not the fatness itself that is of concern, but the high-frequency mentality of a person. And whether or not the person is overweight is indicative of an internal problem with food or psychological, which indicates that she or he does not have a high enough frequency. However, this is also simplistic, because a person evolves throughout their life, and he may be carrying a food and weight problem because of a psychological problem that is no longer there, so it is all complex. Yes, one more question. Speaking of reptiles, someone left me a curious related question. If the reptilians can't function at higher frequencies, why not transmit some very high frequency bombs from the moon and kill them off? They would burn up, wouldn't they? That question, although perhaps expressed in other words, has been answered before. You can't do that because 1. That would mean raising the density all at once, with the subsequent mental and perception problems it would create for the population. 2. It would be highly invasive and disrespectful to the desires of life and experience of the people on Earth. 3. The Federation would have to be the ones to do it, and it is known that they are complicit in all this, even by omission of action. So they don't do it to preserve the Earth as it is. 4. The reptiles themselves, as they are on Earth, are a reflection of the egregor creative force of the human population. Raising the frequency would only help manifest that egregor faster. Or at least, it would only cause people to depend on outside help, learn nothing, and repeat their mistakes and recreate their egregors.
You are so right, Tina. Everything would manifest faster.
You can't create frequency bombs that way. If we transmitted a high-frequency energy beam, it would only feed the reptiles more. It would make them feel very good, far from killing them. They would be happy and laughing. This has to come from the mental frequency point of view of those who feed them and form them as egregors, the human population and their level of consciousness. I think that to control our minds, especially in the environment as we are in, is very difficult if the Lyrians themselves could not control it well in the previous wars when they were scattered throughout the galaxy, and they had neither the moon nor the matrix cabal. So how come they had so much mental disorder? Yazhi has explained it once, saying that they also had fears and internal conflicts. That's why all that has manifested. But I would say that with what is happening now on Earth, it would be much more difficult to control our minds. Because there is more matrix outside the Earth. As we have said all along, there is more humanity out there. The researchers don't see it. That's why we wear earrings, t-shirts, tennis shoes, and use curling irons here. But the egregor problem, as it is on Earth, is of a specific and especially dense flavor there. The regressive variant is especially evil on Earth. And in itself, as a school of life, the Earth as it is useful, because in other densities and in higher frequencies, the egregors are generated faster and more efficiently. You manifest all you are thinking about. Different questions about the moon from previous conversations. Exact date unknown.
There is a question that many ask me, and it is never clear to me. The moon and its matrix was created by the Federation. Was this done on another planet? Is there any other planet in the universe that is in this situation?
No, only on Earth or with Earth. It is like an experiment, they say. Yes, it was the Federation who set up the 3D. Then the regressives, mostly reptilians, turned it all in their favor. Remember that reptilians are good at modifying things to their convenience, but very bad at creating new things and concepts. But in my first video, I remember that you said that there were 10 other planets, and that the Earth was in the most dire situation. Not in the same way or dynamics, not with a lunar matrix. Rather, it is by manifestation or perception of the inhabitants themselves, perhaps under negative mind control. This is without the added technology of the moon that the Earth is under. But you can have 3D or any D just by perception or level of consciousness. Another talk.
I have a question, and it is about the moon hologram that many may be asking as well. If the hologram does not cover the entire moon, only the visible face of the Earth, from where is the hologram that covers the lunar surface projected? Thank you.
It is projected from the surface of the moon from multiple points. It is a collage of images. Each projector covers a small area, and together they cover the entire surface. This also explains why some places look different, showing structures that disappear later and similar anomalies. The projectors fail. Sometimes some of them, sometimes others. How many? We are talking about several thousand projectors.
Very likely that some of them will stop working.
Yes, they fail alone. There isn't much impact if some are failing. They always fail, or several are not working at all times. But there are also many that tend to fail together. Another chat. When the matrix on the moon was installed, the 3D projected 12,500 years ago, did people feel it right away or gradually? And the moon started to look different just overnight? They were in such a disgraceful shape with all the cataclysms and all the trauma that they caused that they didn't really have any way of comparing with or without the matrix. However they would feel would be immediately attributed to all the very negative events that had just taken place. I mean, just imagine what survivors would feel to see the former large woodland extensions of land be completely inundated. They had no way of even noticing the change, as the few survivors went from living in a highly technological and comfortable advanced society to living in caves, where the only commodity was fire and some kind of a hunted animal, remembering and missing their former lives. The change itself did happen just about overnight, or over a few minutes. The moon started to have new appearance suddenly? As suddenly as any other ship arriving and parking in Earth's orbit. Another chat.
Aneeka, why can't there be water on the moon? Is there any explanation for that? Couldn't it be water from the nuclear reactors?
The reactors are not on the surface but inside. Remember that it is a space station. They don't need water like a pond like the ones on Earth. Their surface is a metal ball. There's no water there. There is, but inside in water tanks, not as NASA describes it. That is a pure lie. There is water on the surface of Mars, like lakes and rivers. There, yes, not on the moon. The same as there's no water on the surface of the spacecraft. There's no reason for it. It is a spacecraft. But inside, yes, in tanks logically.
Thank you. And one more thing. The reactors are not nuclear. We just used the word nuclear as the closest match, right?
No, this time they are nuclear, uranium-based. They used enriched uranium. It is an almost identical system to the one used on Earth. There were 12 reactors, 8 are unserviceable, 2 are damaged, and 2 are malfunctioning at minimum power.
And another thing, the nuclear reactors were what provided the energy to that ship? And what is the real name of the moon?
No, it looks like that is or was installed later. The 0-point reactors of that biosphere ship damaged in the Tiamat wars were shut down. Maybe damaged or destroyed rather. They don't work anymore. And as for the name of the moon, I don't have that data at hand, but I know it can be found relatively easily.
Could the moon be moved around with those reactors?
No, the nuclear reactors, even the 12 working at maximum capacity, lack sufficient energy to move the moon. Besides, they're not installed to feed engines, only to supply the generators of the matrix frequencies and the hologram.
One more question about the moon. Why is it of interest to them to say that there is water there?
Oh, Robert, I ask myself the same question, just as a distraction to pretend there's something new they find out, and that the science advances.